Okay, problem number 4. Again, this 2007 FRQ is a really good example of don't rush, just go deliberate. You're not trying to get all the points, you're trying to get what points you can. Particle moves along the x-axis with a position given by that formula. So that part does seem very familiar to me. We have seen a lot of FRQs as we've practiced that deal with giving us a position formula. Find the time at which the particle is farthest to the left. Okay, this is where you have to remember, I call it the min-max theorem. The AP test sometimes refers to it as the candidate's test. Pick whichever word is easier for you to remember. The key idea is you have to remember that if I'm trying to find when the particle is farthest left, I'm trying to find the minimum of the position. And the way they expect you to always find the minimum of something is by studying the derivative of what you are trying to minimize. So I've got to go find x prime. And I've got to figure out when is x prime equal to 0. They will almost always give a point for simply remembering that I've got to figure that out. And indeed, that was worth 1 point for doing that. So now I have to go find x prime. So I start up here with x of t is equal to e to the negative t multiplied by the sine of t. So I have to use the product rule and Susie's circle. So x prime of t is the second of the two multiplying functions multiplied by the derivative of this. Okay, the derivative of e to the something is e to that same something multiplied by d of the something. In this problem, the input variable is t, so this has to be over dt. Continuing the product rule, plus the first function multiplied by the derivative of this. Okay, derivative means I go clockwise. So the derivative of the sine is the cosine. So x prime of t will equal sine of t e to the negative t. This would equal negative 1. So all this is multiplied by negative 1. Don't write minus 1, it will look like you're subtracting. This part's done. Okay, if I have this blue line, I get 2 more points. You didn't have to write this line if you could do it in your head. But you have to have this line to get the 2 points. Now I've got to figure out for what value of t will x prime equal 0. So I want to find when this is going to equal 0. So I have sine negative 1 times that needs to equal 0. Can't solve this by getting t alone, it's too complex. So next best way is factoring. So I can factor out an e to the negative t. That will leave negative 1 multiplied by sine plus cosine. This is a very common occurrence on the AP test, to get this little expression. So the only way this can equal 0 is, okay, this can't be 0. E to some exponent will never be 0. So because these two factors are multiplying together, this times this piece has to equal 0 somehow. Well, the sine of something negative plus the cosine can only equal 0 if the sine and cosine values are the same. If you remember the unit circle again, that occurs here at pi over 4, and again here at 5 pi over 4. At this spot, the sine and cosine are both equal to root 2 over 2. At this spot, the sine and cosine are both equal to negative root 2 over 2. So I found the appropriate time, so I need to tell the grader. X prime of t is equal to 0 when t equals pi over 4 or 5 pi over 4. Okay, it's called the candidates test because I know the lowest point of x will be either at the beginning, t equals 0, the end, t equal 2 pi, or where x prime is equal to 0. So I now have 4 candidates. This is another good example of where I have learned by experience that often a problem that is asking you to find the minimum of something takes a lot of work to get the points they're going to give you. The first 3 points weren't too hard. This problem is worth a total of 5. The next 2 points are going to take some work because I have to test the candidates. So, copy this. Clear this off. I need to find when the position is lowest. So I have to plug in those candidates into the position formula. So I take the position at time 0 will equal e to the negative 0 sine of 0. That one turned out to be pretty easy because at an angle of 0, the sine is the up-down, cosine is the across. So the sine is 0, so this is equal to 0. So that computation was easy. Now I have to find x of pi over 4. That's the next candidate. They will not expect you to know this. It's just some positive number multiplied by this is root 2 over 2. So you're going to get root 2 over 2 e to the negative pi over 4. I don't know how that helps me other than, oh, now I do. I'm trying to find where x is lowest. Well, here x has a y value of 0. Here x has some y value that is some positive number, so this is lower so far. So pi over 4 cannot be the correct answer. Okay, 5 pi over 4, here's 1/4, 2/4, 3, 4, 5. So there's the angle 5 pi over 4. From the center, to get to this spot, I would have to go down. So angles that involve a fourth are always root 2 over 2 because I went down negative root 2 over 2. Again, e to any exponent is a positive number, so this is positive, multiplied by this is a negative number. So far I know that the lowest value of x, the time when the particle is most left, is 5 pi over 4, because that's when my position is some negative number. At the other two candidates, my position was 0 and a positive number. I have one more candidate to test. Angle of 2 pi is right here. The sign at this point, I do not go up or down from the center, so this would be 0 times this is also 0. I now have my answer. Therefore, okay, read the question again carefully. Find the time at which the particle is farthest left, justify my answer. Therefore, the particle is farthest left at t equal 5 pi over 4. Okay, this conclusion is worth 1 point. The 4 different checks here, the candidate's test basically, so doing this, including the green, the red, and the blue, that was worth 1 point as well. So this problem here, 4a, is worth 5 total points. Again, the way the points were awarded is you earned 1 point for recognizing that you had to go figure out when x prime is equal to 0. You earned 2 more points for figuring out the formula for x prime. Then this work here was required because you had to find these 2 candidates so that you could then perform the candidate's test. You didn't get a point for that, but you had to do it because otherwise you couldn't do this test, which was worth 1 more point, and then the correct conclusion is worth the 5th point for part 4a.